All right, folks, before you dive into this story, do me a quick solid. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It'll take you a second, but for me, it's a sign that we're on the same page. And one more thing, absolutely leave your thoughts in the comments. You'll see for yourself that this topic is alive, controversial, and I'm incredibly interested in what you have to say. So, are you ready? You're about to hear the tale of a weapon that waited half a century for its recognition, and why sometimes a brilliant idea has to wait for its brilliant user. The Call of Abakan. How a legend was born. Picture the late Soviet Union, the end of the 70s. A country that doesn't yet know it has just over a decade left to exist. The Cold War is in full swing. The conflict in Afghanistan is looming on the horizon. In the hands of the Soviet soldier is the Kalashnikov assault rifle, the legendary AK-74. Reliable as a hammer, simple as a crowbar. It fears neither sand, nor mud, nor falls from a height. But this symbol of an era has one Achilles heel. Firing it in long bursts is almost useless. After the first 2 or 3 shots, the barrel starts to climb, and the rest of the bullets fly who knows where. A soldier in real combat, under stress, cannot perfectly control the recoil. He spends ammunition but doesn't hit targets. The Army needed a breakthrough. Not just a new version of an old friend, but something fundamentally different. A weapon that thinks for the shooter at the most critical moment. And so, the Ministry of Defense put out the call. A competition with a formidable and mystical name was announced. Abakan. The goal was nothing less than to create an assault rifle that would surpass the AK-74 in automatic fire accuracy by a factor of 2. Not improved by 10%, but by 2 times. This was a challenge to the entire Soviet firearms community, a call to which the best of the best responded. It is here in dusty design bureaus, over drawing boards covered with tons of tracing paper, that our story begins. This is not just a story of iron and springs. It is a story of people, their ambitions, their genius insights, and bitter disappointments. The story of an assault rifle that almost won, but lost, only to then, decades later, triumphantly return. This is the story of the AEK-971. Part 1. A diagnosis for the system. Why the Kalash wasn't perfect. To understand the genius of the AEK, you must first understand the problem it was solving. Let's break down, in simple terms, what recoil is and why it throws the barrel up. Remember your school physics course. Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When the cartridge case ignites, the propellant gases with monstrous force push the bullet forward through the barrel. But that same force pushes in the opposite direction against the bolt. The bolt carrier, like a piston, recoils backward, compressing the spring, to then return, chamber a new round, and fire the next shot. Here's the key moment. This bolt carrier has mass. And when it moves backward at high speed along the barrel axis, it creates a powerful impulse. Imagine you're sitting in a boat, and you throw a heavy rock from the stern forward. The boat will jerk backward. Roughly the same thing happens with an assault rifle. The massive bolt group slams back into your shoulder, and the barrel tends to lift up. This is recoil. In semi-automatic mode, this isn't so critical. You fire a shot, the rifle jumps, you return it to the target. But in full auto mode, this process turns into chaos. The bolt carrier runs back and forth at a frenetic pace, up to 900 cycles per minute, creating constant vibration and jerking the barrel up and to the right. The bullets from the first couple in the burst fly accurately to the target, and all the subsequent ones, anywhere but there. The soldier is forced to fire short bursts of 2 or 3 shots, spending precious seconds re-aiming. In close combat, where split seconds decide everything, this could cost a life. The designers understood this, and different solutions were proposed. Some tried incredibly complex schemes with impulse shift. Others experimented with the rate of fire. But the Kovrov gunsmiths took a different, surprisingly elegant, and, when you think about it, ingeniously simple path. They decided not to fight the recoil, but to trick it. Part 2. The birth of an idea. Kovrov genius versus the laws of physics. The city of Kovrov, not the most famous on tourist maps, but for those in the know, one of Russia's firearms capitals. It was here at the Kovrov mechanical plant that a team worked under the leadership of Stanislav Ivanovich Kocherov, a man who was not afraid to challenge the very nature of firearms. They took as a basis a not very well-known but very promising model, the Konstantinov system, which had participated in earlier trials. But Kocherov and his team added their own key twist. They came up with a balanced automatic system. Let me try to explain this principle as if we were sitting at a table with a mug of tea and I'm drawing a diagram on a napkin. Imagine a children's seesaw. On one side sits a boy. This is our bolt carrier. On the other, a girl of the same mass. This is our balancer. If the boy pushes off and flies down, the girl on the other side will fly up. Their movements mutually compensate each other, and the seesaw doesn't jerk on its support. Now let's transfer this metaphor to the assault rifle. When fired, the propellant gases push not only the bullet. Part of these gases is diverted through a special hole in the barrel into the gas chamber. There, they press on a piston rigidly connected to the bolt carrier. The latter, as expected, begins to move backward. But here's the trick. The gases also push a second piston connected to that very balancer. And this balancer begins to move forward. Yes, not backward, but forward toward the muzzle. The mass of the balancer and the mass of the bolt carrier are identical. Their speeds of movement are equal. It turns out that one massive element flies backward and another, equally massive, flies forward. Their impulses, mass multiplied by velocity, are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction, and they cancel each other out. A storm rages inside the rifle, but only a small fraction of this energy is transferred to the body, to the shooter's shoulder. The result? The assault rifle, when firing in bursts, remains not just calm. It behaves as if a gyroscope were built into it. The barrel hardly jumps. Bullet after bullet lands in the same spot at a distance of 200 or 300 meters. According to test data, the grouping of shots in bursts from unstable positions, standing, kneeling, of the AEK-971 was 1.5 to 2 times better than that of the AK-74. Imagine the difference. A soldier with an AK-74 might place 5 or 6 of his 30 rounds on target. A fighter with an AEK, all 15 or 20. This isn't an improvement. This is a revolution. Part 3. The Golden Age and the Iron Curtain. Why genius was sidelined. So by August of the year 1984, the prototype was ready. The Garov-Kocherov assault rifle, designated AK-971, stood before the harsh commission of the Abakan competition. It was technological, accurate, balanced. It seemed victory was in its pocket. But history, especially firearms history, is rarely linear and fair. The winner of Abakan was declared to be the Nikonov assault rifle, the AN-94 Abakan, a wonder weapon with a shifted rate of fire and a highly complex mechanism that provided incredible accuracy for the first 2 shots in a hyperburst mode. So why did the AEK lose? The reasons were not so much technical as they were economic and, if you will, philosophical. 1. Complexity and cost. The AN-94 was incredibly complex, but its complexity was in its unique firing mechanism. The AEK was complex in a different way, in its demanding manufacturing. The precise fitting of the 2 moving masses, the gear train between them. All this required higher manufacturing standards and, consequently, more money. The late USSR was no longer the industrial superpower of the 50s. The economy was stalling, perestroika was beginning. The state purse was straining at the seams. The idea of launching into mass production a more expensive assault rifle, even a more effective one, seemed like an unaffordable luxury to the defense officials. 2. Doctrine. Soviet military doctrine was based on a mass mobilization army. In theory, in case of a major war, it would be necessary to arm millions of people. The weapon had to be obscenely simple, so that a conscript after basic training could quickly master it, and cheap, so that it could be made by the millions at any plant, even a non-cutting-edge one. The AK-74 fit this paradigm perfectly. The AEK, with its delicate mechanics, did not. It was a weapon for a professional, and the army was an army of conscripts. 3. Conservatism. Breaking production chains that have been established for decades is a Herculean task. The machines, tooling, technologies, and thousands of workers were all geared towards the AK-74. Switching to a new system meant colossal costs and a temporary loss of volume. No one wanted to take that risk. And so the brilliant but ahead of its time AK-971 was shelved. It seemed forever. Part 4. The Turbulent 90s. Survival in an era of chaos. The collapse of the Soviet Union was a shock to the entire defense industry. Giant plants that worked on a single-state order found themselves in limbo. Money wasn't paid for months. Engineers and workers left to sell newspapers in underpasses. But paradoxically, it was during this time that the AEK got its chance. The mass army was shrinking, but various security agencies, the FSB, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, special units, on the contrary, needed high-quality and effective weapons. Weapons for professionals, for whom the cost of a mistake was measured not in rubles, but in lives. It was then that the AK-971 began to be produced in small, custom batches. It found its way into the hands of those who could truly appreciate its main quality, its phenomenal stability in automatic fire. Special Forces soldiers, fighting in urban environments where engagement distances are short and decisions must be instantaneous, made it a quiet legend. Nothing jerks inside, the barrel doesn't climb. You lay down a burst, everything goes into the same hole, was how those who worked with it described it. This was the period of underground fame. Officially, the army was armed with Kalashnikovs. But in the rear, in the arsenals of elite units, the one who had once been rejected was already lying in wait for his hour. Part 5. The 21st Century. Ratnik, Cord, and a new philosophy of war. The 2000s arrived. The Russian army began a slow but steady revival. An understanding came that the wars of the future would be high-tech, and the army should not be mass-based but professional. The concept of the conscript soldier was replaced by the concept of the soldier operator, equipped with the most modern gear. Thus, the state program Ratnik was born, a large-scale project to create the gear for the warrior of the future. And within its framework, the old, reliable AEK was remembered once again. But it was not it itself that was to be born, but its spiritual successor, its rebirth. The Degtyarev plant, ZD, where all the developments have been transferred by that time, presented a deeply modernized version, the A545 assault rifle. What was new in it? Everything required from a weapon in the 21st century. Handguard and receiver. Instead of the familiar fins, a modular system with Picatinny rails according to the NATO standard appeared. Now a fighter could assemble his own configuration, flashlight, laser target designator, foregrip, rangefinder, anything. Stock, telescopic, adjustable for length. The rifle could now be perfectly tailored to any fighter, regardless of his build or equipment. Ergonomics. A comfortable pistol grip, convenient fire selector switches, output on both sides. It was possible to shoot from either shoulder without changing grip. Sights. Standard ability to mount collimator or optical sights directly on the receiver. Inside, however, remained the same, time-tested Sol, Kocharov's balanced automatics. And then, in 2014, 2015, the unthinkable happened by the standards of the old Soviet system. Large-scale state tests were conducted, where the new A545 Cord faced off in a direct confrontation with the new AK-12, the heir to the classic Kalashnikov line. It was a battle of two philosophies. On one side, evolution, proven reliability, cheapness, and mass production. On the other, revolution, the highest efficiency but complexity and price. The tests showed an interesting picture. At distances of up to 300 meters, the Cord demonstrated a 10 to 15% superiority in hit probability thanks to its accuracy. In automatic mode, it was unrivaled. However, at longer distances, where a single shot is more important, the AK-12 pulled slightly ahead. And critically, the AK-12 was significantly cheaper to produce. And then the military made a Solomonic decision. Brilliant in its simplicity. They did not choose one winner. They adopted both assault rifles. In December 2017, it was announced the AK-12 and its version for the 7.62 cartridge, the AK-15, would become the general issue assault rifles. And the A545 and its 7.62 version, named Cord, would go to Special Forces units, SSO, Special Operations Forces, Airborne Forces Intelligence. Think about the irony of fate. An assault rifle created for a mass army, but rejected by it for its complexity, found its true calling almost half a century later. It became a weapon for the chosen few. For those whose job is not to shoot a lot, but to hit with the first shot. For whom every shot, every cartridge is critical. For whom the price of a weapon is nothing compared to the price of a completed mission and a saved life. Epilogue: The Lessons of the AEK. Why this story matters today. The story of the AEK-971 is not just a story about a weapon. It's a parable that a brilliant idea does not die. It can lie dormant, be put on the back burner, be considered impractical and too expensive. But if the idea is truly right, it will wait for its time. It will wait for a paradigm shift, wait for new technologies to appear, wait for those users who can truly appreciate its advantages. The idea of balanced automatics waited for its soldier operator in Ratnik gear for almost 50 years. And it waited. This story also teaches us that better is not always synonymous with needed right now. In its context, the context of a mass conscript army of the late 70s, the decision to choose a simpler and cheaper assault rifle, or even the AN-94 with its unique solution, was logical. But contexts change, and what was impractical yesterday becomes priceless today. Today, Cord assault rifles are indeed in service. They're used in Syria, in the Special Military Operations Zone, everywhere where our elite units operate. This is no longer an experimental prototype, not a legend from the 90s. It is a real, formidable, and incredibly effective weapon, embodying the dream of the Kovrov designers. So the next time you hear about some groundbreaking but unappreciated project, remember the story of the AEK. Remember how it lay on a shelf, waiting for the world to become ready for it. Perhaps, right now, in some design bureau, a new such idea is being born. One that will change everything. But we will only find out about it in 20, 30, or maybe even 50 years. All right, folks, that's it for our big story. I hope it was as exciting a journey for you as it was for me. This topic is alive, and each of you surely has your own opinion. What do you think? Was the Soviet Commission right to shelve the AEK? Or should they have taken the risk and launched it immediately? Maybe you served and have your own view on the problem of accuracy? Be sure to write your comment. Let's argue, let's discuss, it's so interesting. And of course, if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Your support helps me find and tell you these stories. Thanks for sticking with me till the end.